Today is Sunday, January 14th, 2018, and this is Celtics Beat here on CLNS Media, and I am Evan Valenti. Episode number 245 is brought to you by Casper, a sleep brand that continues to revolutionize its line of products to create an exceptionally comfortable sleep experience one night at a time. Get $50 off select mattress purchases by visiting casper.com/Celtics and using the promo code Celtics at checkout. Today's episode is also brought to you by eHarmony. My listeners right now get a free month with eHarmony when they sign up for a 3-month subscription. Enter my code CelticsBeat at checkout. Happy Sunday, everybody. Evan Valenti back here on the show. Going to make this short and sweet. I'm not really happy with the fact that we've seen one game in 1 week. That's not cool. I love this team. I love watching this team, and getting one game after the bevel of games that we've had, the cornucopia of games that we've had, especially through December. It's just not fair. Bring this team back. Luckily for us, we get 3 games this week. New Orleans, Philly, both at home. Then Sunday, a week from today, versus Orlando. Again, all 3 games in the TD Garden. Get out there and make some noise in the TD Garden. Should be fun. Boogie and Anthony Davis, the Sixers, who the Celtics seem to own this year, and Orlando, who was nice to start the year, but not so great now, though Eric Gordon's having a great year. So let's not waste any more time. Let's get to Chad Fitton, one of my favorite people. He covers the media, essentially, for the Boston Globe. One of my favorite guys to chat with. Love his stuff. Let's get to Chad.
I don't know about you, Chad, but I don't think I've ever seen a team like this Boston Celtics team that loves being down 15-plus points in a game. These guys seem to relish being Sean Grandy has the great stat, and I'll find it in a second, but this team has come back from so many big deficits. Have you ever seen a team that has overcome so many huge, 25 points or 26 points to Houston, 20-plus points to Golden State? You had the game in London where they were down 20-plus to Philadelphia, still found ways to win all those games. You ever see a team relish that kind of opportunity like this?
Probably not to this degree, Evan, especially against good teams. You mentioned Houston and Golden State. It doesn't get much better than those two. I suspect a big reason for it is because of their reliance on the three. And you can start out slowly and have it not falling for anybody. And all of a sudden one guy gets hot and, Kyrie gets hot and suddenly they're falling for Tatum and Jaylen Brown hits a few. Even Marcus might hit a couple and all of a sudden you're back in the game. So, and Terry Rozier lately too. So I think that's probably a big part of it. It's just the math of it that you're getting more points per attempt, per make when you're firing up the threes at the rate that the current NBA teams do nowadays. I kind of remember it a little bit from the early Pierce Twan years, because Twan was so up and down with his 3-point shooting, and they had the big comeback in the East Finals against the Nets that one year. But it seems like the Celtics do that right now every 3 weeks or so.
Again, Sean Grandy, who is the play-by-play voice of the Boston Celtics, done a great job detailing this statistic. They've been down 26 against Houston, 22 against Philadelphia, 18 against Oklahoma City, 18 in a game against Charlotte where they didn't have Kyrie Irving. They did it 17 against Golden State, 16 against Atlanta, 13 against Dallas, 13 against Indiana. All those resulted in wins. I have just really never seen anything like it. You mentioned the 3-point shooting, and that's kind of where we are with today's NBA. Everybody shoots a ton of threes.
Right.
You look at Houston, they do it to the most extreme degree. I think Boston, and a lot of people talk about the 3-point shooting in today's NBA, and I get a lot of people that call on my radio show all the time that talk to me about how they hate the 3-point shooting, and that's just the trend right now. But the one thing about Boston is they at least, for the most part, Chad, I think they at least take good ones, right?
Yeah, I think so, don't you? I mean, Marcus will have a stretch.
Yeah,
You say,
yeah, okay.
You're watching it develop, and you say, no, and then it goes up, and sometimes it goes in, I guess. But no, for the most part, they do take good shots. So one thing that frustrates me, and I know it definitely frustrates the old-timers, is when say Horford has the ball 5 feet from the basket and it looks like he has a layup, maybe a contested layup, but a makeable shot. And he'll kick it out to the corner for a 3 for Jaylen or Rozier or somebody. They're trying to get they could have the 2. They're trying to get that extra point. And we all know the math that goes into that and the value of a 3-pointer nowadays. But I think it drives the old, you got to have a post player, you got to have your back to the basket, that crew crazy. But yeah, I think they generally take good shots and have great spacing on offense for the most part. And I don't have any complaint about it. I guess I'm kind of a middle old timer. I'm in my late 40s, but to me, the best era of basketball was the mid 80s. But this is the second best I've ever seen. And this team in particular is an absolute joy to watch.
Yeah, I love the spacing too. Al Horford, a big part of how well they space the floor. And like you watch some other teams, like there's a couple of guys on, the Twitter sphere that do a great job of detailing, like as an example, the Bucks. And they're absolutely horrific court spacing that they have on the floor. Like it's like a crime against humanity when you watch a team like we are really fortunate we get to watch a team like the Celtics play all the time, and how the ball moves from side to side, inside and out. Like the one big complaint I think offensively that I have with this team is, and Scal talks about all the time, you hear Tommy yell at, trying to yell at Brad Stevens across the floor all the time, that the ball needs to hit the paint more, so you can kick it out for wide open 3-point shots. You draw the attention of the defense inside the paint, and then everything kind of sets itself up around that. The only problem with that is Boston doesn't have a lot of guys that can get into the paint really at will. They have Kyrie, who does it whenever he wants to, but everybody else is sort of hit or miss. You have Terry Rozier, who's starting to kind of feel his way a little bit, and his improvement has been crucial to how Boston has played, especially over the 7-game winning streak. Smart, again, pending the matchup, can do it most times, cannot, or if he gets a full out of steam, can kind of do it. They don't really have that kind of creation on the offensive end. If we're looking at things that Boston doesn't do well, that's one of the big highlights, I think.
Yeah, the guy who's going to do it more often as he gets older and maybe turns 20 is Jayson Tatum. He's showing more and more that he can get into the paint. And then, he was doing kind of that plastic man extended finish layup when the season first began, and it was effective. And then they got scouting reports on him, and that he ran into a little bit of a wall with that for a while. But now he's finishing in all kinds of different ways. He's finishing with dunks and left-handed and right-handed, and I think he's going to be somebody who's right up there with the guards in terms of his ability to get into the paint and create that way. I also think, I should ask somebody this, but it feels like Rozier's really benefited from playing with Kyrie. Like he's not Kyrie, nobody is, but he sees the skill set Kyrie has, and he looks at it and says, I can do some of those things. I can handle a ball pretty well. I've got a great first step. And it seems like Kyrie has been really encouraging toward him. You notice when Rozier hits a big shot, which has happened more and more often lately, Kyrie's the first guy up on the bench, giving him a high five or something. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but
no, I think you're right. I think you're right on that. Yeah. There's been times throughout the season. Well, there's obviously with Isaiah being in the fold. I think Terry and Isaiah, they worked out in the offseason a lot together, and Terry took a lot from Isaiah. But I agree with you. I think in the short time we've seen Terry Rozier play with Kyrie Irving, I mean, not necessarily together, but again, playing the same team. But Terry has kind of adapted some of his tendencies. There was a shot the other night, and I'm trying to remember the exact game it was. Maybe it was that Brooklyn game. Maybe it was the game before, where it was a page right out of Kyrie's book, drove to the right side with his right hand, and just pulled up from about 10 feet, 8 feet, and banked it off the glass. I've never seen Terry do that in my life, and Kyrie does that with relative ease all the time. But I want to get back to this idea of Boston getting down early in a game, because, and maybe not early, but throughout points of the game. In the game in London, they were down early. There's two ways you can look at this conundrum or this phenomenon of Boston finding ways to come back in games. There's one, wow, that's really awesome. They found a way to come back in this game. That shows great mental toughness. This team, at this point, I mean, yes, you're watching the game in London. In the third quarter, I was convinced that they were going to come back and win that game. And by the time the third quarter ended, I knew wholeheartedly they were going to win the game. You could say that that's a mental toughness thing, or this is a huge red flag. This team finds different ways to fall behind what seems like almost every game. They get down double digits routinely, and this could be a red flag for something later on. Like we all try to say this about the Cavaliers, and I think a lot of people are falling into this camp. Yes, they still have LeBron James, but this defense has to be a red flag. Couldn't you easily make that same thing for the Celtics, that they have some serious issues here?
I think so, but you know what? All things considered, I would take that no-quit mentality, the ability to come back when you're down 17 twice like they were against the Warriors, or even in a game against the lesser opponent where you're not going to be as jacked up as they were for the Warriors or for the Rockets to come back. That Charlotte game or the Dallas game where they had to scratch that one out. I like that characteristic much better than more. I'll take that characteristic with it coming with the fact that they start slowly sometimes over a team that maybe starts well every night, but just doesn't have the ability to close the gap when they do fall behind. I like the character of this team a lot. It's a mystery sometimes why they're not ready to go or why they struggle out of the gate. But they're going to step on the accelerator at some point. And I think that's very high up the list of things you want out of your contending basketball team. So I like that a lot about them, even though it can be frustrating in the game's first 15 minutes or so.
Today's edition of Celtics Beat is being presented by Casper. Casper is a sleep brand that continues to revolutionize its line of products to create an exceptionally comfortable sleep experience one night at a time. Casper's mattresses are designed by humans for humans, made right here in the US of A. They combine multiple supportive memory foams for a quality sleep surface with just the right sink and just the right balance. Casper's breathable design helps you sleep cool and regulate your body temperature through the night. And they're not just a mattress company either. Casper offers a wide array of products to ensure an overall better sleep experience. And buying the Casper is easy. You order it online, it's then delivered to your door in a compact box, and free shipping, free returns to the US and Canada. And with all that, you get a free 100-day risk-free trial. Considering we spend 1/3 of our lives on a mattress, it's so important to truly sleep on a mattress before committing to one, and that's why Casper gives you 100 nights to try it out. Start sleeping ahead of the curve with Casper. Get $50 towards select mattress purchases by visiting Casper.com/Celtics and using the promo code Celtics at checkout. Terms and conditions apply. Again, that's $50 towards select mattress purchases by visiting Casper.com/Celtics and using the promo code Celtics at checkout. This episode is also brought to you by eHarmony. Look, if you're trying online dating, chances are you've probably run into one of these things. Lazy text messages, dead-end conversations, and random matches that just don't turn into dates. You can't really get to know someone just by looking at their picture, and that's where eHarmony comes into play. eHarmony is like any other dating site, okay? eHarmony takes steps that other dating sites do not do in order to find you the most compatible match. They are built to help you find lasting, meaningful relationships, not just a shallow hookup site. They've helped over 1 million people find the perfect match, and eHarmony uses years and years and years of science, data, and psychological research to send you the right matches. eHarmony flat out just brings compatible people together. Look, folks, there are plenty of hookup sites out there. This is not what eHarmony represents, okay? And right now, my listeners get a free month of eHarmony when they sign up for a 3-month subscription just by entering my code CelticsBeat at checkout. Again, that's a free month with a 3-month subscription. Again, that's a free one for a 3-month subscription. We have my buddy Parker giving this a test drive, and we're going to be talking to Parker in a little bit, okay? Not this episode in particular. I want him to get his feet wet a little bit with eHarmony, figure how it's used, test the waters a little bit, and we'll get to him at some point in the next couple of weeks. I can't wait to hear from him and how easy it's been to find compatible matches with eHarmony. Stop waiting and start your journey to a satisfying, meaningful relationship today. It can be fun to play around with online dating apps, but when you are finally ready to fall in love with someone and having a meaningful relationship, there's one app that's built to bring you real love, and that's eHarmony. Come see how eHarmony can change your life. Go to eHarmony.com and get started. Just enter my promo code CelticsBeat at checkout.
What's your favorite thing about Jayson Tatum so far? I have an answer, but I'll wait on yours.
That he's turning into Grant Hill before our eyes. I mean, it's true. I hate going overboard with that, but the comparisons I've made all year, he's got a little bit of Pierce in him for sure. More elongated and a little more athletic, and certainly not as wise as Pierce was. Pierce had the old man game when he came into the league, even though he was more athletic as a young player. Alex English was one that I saw, being from my generation, a guy who scored with incredible grace. But there's a writer in California. I think he works for the Orange County paper, but he's covered the NBA forever, named Lyle Spencer. And he made the comparison to young Hill to me on Twitter the other day, and I thought, wow, Grant Hill as a young player was supposed to be the next Michael Jordan. But you go back and look at what Grant Hill did on the court. He's a much better passer than Tatum is at this point, but his ability to score, it looks very, very similar. And I don't know about you, Evan, but those people who were really upset when Danny Ainge traded the number 1 pick to go down and get Tatum, just for the sake of getting another draft pick back as well, haven't heard from many of them lately. I think everybody agrees Jayson Tatum is a cornerstone for a long time here.
He's unbelievable, and I do believe Danny when they say, and Ben Brad said this too, they would have drafted him 1 overall if they didn't make the trade.
I've been told that by somebody with the Celtics probably 3 months before, that Tatum was this guy, and I didn't know if I should believe it because that's not what you heard publicly, but a pretty good source was right about that.
It's just, and from what we've been able to gather since, I think Brad let it slip during a pregame interview, or maybe during a practice session or something like that, but when they brought Tatum in to work out, he made a lot of shots. And you look at some of his, I've had Drew Hanlon on the show before, and we're still working on getting him back on again about, Tatum growing up and learning on the, as he went. And, they had him in the summertime. There was that great, clip that they leaked out of Tatum hitting 18 threes in a row, missing one, then hitting 7 in a row. Just standing still, and you're like, uh-oh. Maybe, but, anybody can shoot an open gym, right? We always have that adage. Who shot really well in an open gym was Jerry and Grant, and he still can't really find his way on an NBA roster. Jerry and Grant had one of the best workout videos I've ever seen. He did this, star thing where he started at the top of the key, shot a 3, ran to one corner, shot a 3, ran to the next corner, shot a 3, ran back up to the left wing, then finished off on the right wing in kind of a star formation, and hit all 5 of them with relative ease. So at that point, I was like, oh, this guy's great. And then he can't find his way really on an NBA roster. Meanwhile, Tatum has been, again, unbelievable. My favorite thing about Tatum is how quickly he learns. And just is so adaptable to whatever Boston wants him to do. The beginning of the year, Hayward goes down, and basically they're like, okay, all you really have to do is shoot open threes and attack closeouts, and that's really it. That's it. That's all we need you to do. And then at that point, for the first couple of games, he's a 50% three-point shooter, and then they're like, okay, what can we do now to kind of take the training wheels off? Now you see him, more of a pick and roll guy. They'll bring him off a pick, and they'll just take the shot right off a pick. He's fantastic at that. He drives the basket with relative ease now. His vision, I think they're still trying to figure out how to really incorporate that part of his game because he can move the ball. But you've seen the training wheels get looser and looser and looser and looser as the year goes on. And by the end of the year, this kid's going to be riding the bicycle like he was a pro and he woke up doing it. So I just love how on both ends of the floor, not just offensively, because defensively he's been, again, great too, but the way he learns and how quickly he adapts what coaches tell him, I think is the biggest thing he has going forward.
Well, yeah, because one of the knocks, two of the knocks coming in the league were that he may not have NBA three-point range. I don't know what that says about the spacing at Duke last year or how they utilized him, but that was one of the things you'd read, from Kevin O'Connor or Draft Express guys or whoever it happened to be. And the other one was maybe not the best teammate, that he had a lot of belief in his own ability and it sometimes rubbed guys the wrong way. I don't know who Danny talked to or what Danny saw himself, but clearly those things don't apply to him as a rookie at the NBA level. The teammate issue, he's been absolutely perfect from what I've heard. I'm curious what your comp is for him. Is there a guy you see there?
So I've tried this. I've tried to go through again. So I'm 27, so you got to kind of scale it differently, right? So I did this thing where I try to go back and look at early Brandon Roy, a little Michael Redd, Danny Granger, Melo when he was younger and had legs. And the one thing that sticks out about Tatum over the other guys right away is the rebounding. It hasn't been a big thing recently, but Tatum rebounds better than all of those guys. So, and he's not pure, because, I would talk with Jared Weiss, and Jared Weiss has always kind of used Paul George as his comp, as, his upper ceiling. And I just don't see how he gets to that point defensively, because before the injury with Paul George, he was the best wing defender in the NBA, not named LeBron James. He was just absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
And we go back to those games, those series against the Heat, where it was Hibbert and George Hill and David West and little Lance Stevenson and Paul George against that great Miami teams, and they would go toe-to-toe with those teams. And a big part of that was because Paul George would just get in the shorts of LeBron and make his life really difficult. Now, LeBron would have great games, but even with that, he had to try really hard to do that. So yeah. I'm really hesitant on the Paul George stuff, but the offensive stuff that you see from him and the way that Boston uses him, they really only use him. It's kind of like, it's a little Belichickian, and I hate to use that name at all when trying to compare anything, but Boston has been able to find a way for Jayson Tatum to be effective on the floor at all times. Like, they only really play to his strengths, and as he's gotten more comfortable, they've kind of seen more of his strengths and kind of utilized that a little bit. And again, that Grant Hill is one I've come back to, and I just don't go there because that guy before
was
all
great.
The injuries was unbelievable. I mean, it was the perfect prototype player you could draw up, especially for today's NBA now, where this floor spacing is really pivotal, and having, guys that can make guard-like plays on the wing or even at center are really in high demand in the NBA. So if you look at Grant Hill early on, that's kind of a guy I've hesitated going that far with, but unfortunately, Chad, I've gotten there with you as well. It's like maybe like a Grant Hill light, which is really scary for the rest of the league, especially at the disposal of the great Brad Stevens so far. One of the things I've also kind of gotten around to is there's still some things about the season, like even though it's been super fun and Boston has been the best team in the NBA by certain metrics this season, and they've obviously been a joy to watch, but there are certain things around this team that I don't really enjoy. And basically, the past couple of weeks have made this pretty prominent. This Isaiah stuff, we gotta stop this. It feels like it gets shoehorned in to every conversation possible about, Isaiah and being traded and whatever, whether it's the jersey retirement night with Pierce and whatever we show a video or not, or compare. My least favorite thing is people that compare Isaiah Thomas and Kyrie Irving like they're the same player or something. Like, it's just anything that has, I think, it really has gotten to me. I think the Isaiah Thomas stink is still lurking over the Boston Celtics, and it's really just, out of all the fun things we've seen this year, it's still kind of bringing me down a little bit. Anything about the Celtics this year, at least in terms of narrative or storylines, that you don't like this year?
No, that would be up there, but I think it probably fades away, at least until we get closer to Paul Pierce, number retirement night, and then the Isaiah element pops up again. But I understand why he feels the way he does. He liked it here. He's had some say in convincing Al Horford to come here and Gordon Hayward, and put a pretty heavy push on Kevin Durant as well, and felt like he was a Celtic, and maybe he overestimated that. But the Celtics certainly benefited from it, and then made the best trade for the organization when the time came. And I think it was difficult for him to deal with, which I can understand. But I agree with you. There's a time to move on. Otherwise, no, I wish Gordon Hayward hadn't got hurt in the first quarter, the first game of the season, because you can only imagine how dynamic they would be right now. But maybe Jayson Tatum doesn't develop to the degree that he has. Maybe Jaylen Brown doesn't get the minutes that he has had to make his improvements. So in a small kind of way, even that was a little bit of a blessing. And it sounds like Hayward will be back to add even more to this, if not late this season, then full strength next year. So I have no complaints. They've been a joy to watch every night for the most part, and it's become appointment viewing. For me, Celtics are anyway. I'm sure they are for you, but it's at the point in my household where my wife asks me every day, "Are the Celtics playing?" And that's
my
never
mom
been...
does that. I get texts from my mom all the time.
It's a different level.
Yeah,
it's a different level. So I have no gripes at all. Maybe I will after the playoffs are over if something goes wrong. But right now, this is a heck of a ride. I got one more Jayson Tatum, Grant Hill thing for you too.
Go ahead. Absolutely, bring it on, man.
Grant Hill was 22 when he came into the league. Isn't that crazy?
I know.
He actually stayed in college. He also shot 14% from three his rookie year, which is just hard to believe.
Yeah, so Tatum's already better than Grant Hill at this point. This is what we're getting at.
Yes, that's our conclusion.
Tatum's going to be, I love how Celtics Reddit and Celtics Twitter universe have always been able to link Michael Jordan and Jaylen Brown together. And now we can link Grant Hill and Jayson Tatum together, and they can have Grant Hill and Jayson Tatum, who are going to be just fine. I'm glad you brought up Jaylen Brown, because I feel like with all the Jayson Tatum hysteria, the improvements this guy has made go relatively unnoticed. And I was talking with Greg Casoli last week of the Celtics Wire and the USA Today media group, and we were talking about our favorite storylines. And mine is actually Jaylen Brown, because this is a guy that in college, again, we always use the in college thing, but in college shot like 25% from 3-point range. Again, was a disaster on the offensive end. People didn't know what his ceiling was, and now here he is, year 2, 40% 3-point shooter, an athletic dynamo, covers the best wing player on everybody's team, and is a guy that when you look at him and you're like, well, if he works really hard and if he puts the time in the gym that he does, this guy is absolutely terrifying, especially in transition. I think there is a ceiling where Jaylen Brown, I mean, regardless of whatever he is in terms of his position, doesn't matter to me, but there is potential for Jaylen Brown to be like a top 5, top 10 player in transition in the league at his like peak. I see a guy, when he gets the ball and has space to run, he's going to be impossible. Once his handle's a little bit better, he's going to be impossible to stop.
Yeah, he needs to tighten up that dribble. He still looks like he's on ice skates sometimes, but it's a lot better than it was last year. Our guy, Gary Washburn, one of our Celtics writers, our national NBA writer, he's a Cal grad, and so he was pretty familiar with Jaylen Brown coming out. And he said when the Celtics took him that Cal was such a mess, especially in terms of their offensive spacing, that you couldn't even really tell how good he was, because he'd have a guy standing next to him when he took a jump shot. You know, it's just a disaster, poorly coached team. And apparently this is something Ainge has cited as well, that you watch Cal and you realize that he got absolutely no help on offense, even though they had Ivan Rabb, and who was considered a pretty good NBA prospect at that point. It just it was a mess, and that affected how people perceived him as a freshman. He also got that horrible label of being smart. This is
the dumbest take. I know where you're going.
Yeah, it is. It's so stupid that he questions his coaches.
Well, I would too if I had Ivan Rabb and another center on the floor with me and nobody that could shoot. I feel you, Jaylen.
If you're Brad Stevens and you're confident in who you are and you're a successful coach, you don't mind your players questioning you. If you're a coach who has a reason to be questioned, you're going to be paranoid about that, especially if there's some smart kid who's 19 years old asking the questions and he knows more than you do. So some people put that down as a negative about him. I think the Celtics look at it as they were getting another intelligent player who was going to grasp what they were eventually trying to do. It's funny, though. I've written about this. I don't know if you've seen it. When they ended up with the third pick in that draft, they were hoping to get in the top 2 and hopefully even get Ingram there in the 2 spot. When they ended up with the number 3 spot, Ainge looked around his room at his scouts and, Mike Zarin and everybody who was in there and said, well, guess it's Jaylen Brown. And they all kind of looked at each other like, are you kidding me? We got to talk about everybody else. We got to go over all our reports. And he's like, oh yeah, we'll do all that. But Jaylen Brown, I really think is the guy. And I think you guys are going to be convinced of that pretty quickly. So Ainge had this on his mind as soon as he knew where he was picking. And it was considered a bit of a reach, I guess, by by a lot of people, the ESPN types or whoever. But
I can tell you, I was there at the draft. We were in the interview room, and we're all sitting there because we all, I'm sitting next to Steve Kyler, and I think like Adam Himmelsbach is behind me, and we're just sitting there waiting because we all knew what was going to happen. We knew Ben Simmons going 1, we knew Ingram was going 2. The Celtics were essentially, they had 15 minutes to make their selection, and we I made the joke we should have a Woj ticker at the draft, like right above the podium there, just so that we all had the latest Woj tweets. And now we need Shams too. But anyway, we're sitting there, and when they selected Jaylen Brown, the whole room went like kind of nuts because we were like, wait a minute, we went through all these Woj tweets and all this stuff about Chris Dunn for weeks, and here we are today, and it's Jaylen Brown. This is what's going to happen, and I couldn't be any more happy about it because I think Jaylen's been a really nice addition for them. I want to end here, and this is actually this last part of this is the reason why I want to get you on this particular podcast, because I've been thinking about this lately, and the Ringer apparently has been thinking about this too. We are in this like potential real nice run here for the Celtics. I mean, you have Tatum at 19, Brown at 21, Kyrie's 25 with a contract coming up, but I would almost put my life on it that they'll find a way to come to terms with Kyrie. You have Hayward at 27. Horford's at 31, but it looks like a guy that's going to age pretty well as we go forward here. There's another pick coming. There might be another pick coming with the Memphis pick.
Right.
It just seems like this is a real golden age of Boston Celtics basketball. And I know it's hard to compare to the Russell teams because, A, it's a different game back then, and B, when you have the best player, in the NBA on your team, you can win, 11 titles. It's not like out of the question. But I wanted to see if you could maybe enlighten me a little bit in this regard. Is there anything about the Celtics now that reminds you of the early years, like 79, 80, when Bird finally, first hits the NBA and, averages, 16-10 his first year in the league? Does anything about this Celtics team remind you of the early 80s Celtics teams where you kind of knew right away this team was going to be good for a very long time?
In a different sort of way, because they're structured a lot differently. Like, it's funny, we look back at the 80s as a whole and you say Bird, McHale, Parrish. But in the early 80s, Bird didn't get a ton of touches as a rookie. When McHale got here, he wasn't in the playoff series against the Sixers, the famous 81 playoff series against the Sixers. It was the Bruisers who were getting playing time over him, like Rick Roby. It was Tiny Archibald getting minutes in the backcourt. Max was a huge focal point. You look back at Max's history here. I mean, he had the jump on my back boys in Game 7 in '84, and he was MVP in '81. He was an essential part of them putting up two banners, and it's still sort of looked back as Bird, McHale, Chief. That took a while to develop, and you look at what this is. It's, yes, you have your superstar now in Kyrie Irving, genuine superstar, but it's not it's not the same type of player that you had in those days by any stretch. Basically, you had two combo guards in DJ and Ainge who were kind of interchangeable. DJ was basically the point guard, but you could put Danny at the point, DJ at the two, and have no problem with that. This team also still has some mystery to it because you don't know exactly what Tatum's going to be. He's going to be really good, probably a multi-time All-Star, even maybe something more than that, but you don't know yet. Same with Jaylen Brown. Same with these draft picks that are out there. If this Lakers pick becomes a Kings pick, or if they get it this year, or whether the Memphis pick is a lot better a couple years from now than it is right now. So they've still got some pieces to add to this. What I think you're looking at, though, is extraordinary depth on the current team, especially once they get to genuine championship contention, which may be this year, who knows? But I think if Danny continues to draft the way he has the last few years, even going against conventional wisdom in a couple of points, they are going to be absolutely loaded, not 1 through 8, but probably 1 through 10 at least. And that is something I've never really seen before from any Celtics team.
Yeah, and that's the fun part about it is you have, but you already said you have a superstar in Kyrie Irving already there, but there's potential for more guys maybe like Kyrie down the road, which makes this, this era potentially a very, very long, fun era. That's the Boston Globe's Chad Finney. He's this Globe sports media columnist. He covers basically everything, including the radio airwaves, which apparently you get a lot of flack for, Chad. I'm sorry about that. Just, you listen to the show and you write about what you listen to. So I hate the fact that people criticize that, but hey, that's the word.
Nah, comes that territory.
Yeah, hey. But I appreciate the time, man. Thanks for everything, and we'll talk to you soon, okay?
All right, Evan. Thanks. Take care, man.
And that'll do it for this edition of Celtics Beat here on CLNS Media. Evan Valenti taking off. And before I do, a couple of thank yous to hand out. First and foremost, Chad Finn for joining us from the Boston Globe. Chad's amazing. I love the fact that he's like the media watchdog, essentially, for Boston sports talk, especially. I love that stuff, so make sure you follow Chad at the Boston Globe. Also, more thank yous to hand out. You guys are awesome. I love you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Shout out to Nick Gelso, my CEO of CLNS Media, Larry H. Russell, the former host, and of course the executive producer of this show. Greg Casoli for my researcher. He's a fantastic researcher. You gotta make sure you guys check out his stuff at the Celtics Wire as a part of the USA Today Media Group. Shout out to Chuck Dietz and Steph Legrandot for the music. And again, one more time, you guys. Make sure you follow me on Twitter at Evan Valenti, EVANVALENTI. And check out my daily Celtics Roundtable podcast with my Roundtable crew. Matt Ignall, Jonathan Ignall, Jonathan Levy, Lucky's Pipe, Sam Sheehan, and more all coming all throughout the week this week as well. So I'll see you guys next Sunday with more Celtics Beat here as a part of CLNS Media.
is